Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending where you are. I'm Marcelo, a student in Master's degree in Innovation and Sustainability. And today I have the pleasure to interview Maaiane. Maaiane, thank you very much for accepting our invitation for this next gen lead interview. Could you please tell me and us a little bit about you?
So my name is Maaiane. I live in Zimbabwe. I'm half Danish, half Zimbabwean. And in the last almost 20 years, I've been running a learning village called Kufunda. And Kufunda actually means learning. So we're Kufunda Village, a learning village in the heart of Zimbabwe, learning our way into what it takes to create healthy, vibrant community. And as we learn, we share with communities and people across Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much for sharing. I know that today you have a story to tell about us. For instance, how you started your journey, and yeah, started this project, Kufunda, and uh, and also you will link it a little bit with responsible leadership. And yeah, I'm very glad to be here, and I would like to learn more about this story.
Thank you. So, so your theme and your exploration is around responsible leadership, and I was thinking which story to share, and decided that I'm going to start with the beginning, which is how I came to begin Kufunda Village. And the reason I've chosen to begin there is because my sense of responsible leadership is that it begins with us really listening to ourselves and listening more deeply to ourselves. My experience in my own life, but also with many of the people that I work with, is that as we as we allow ourselves to be guided by our heart, by our vision, by our inspiration, things come through us that are almost bigger and more potent than if we were just coming from our head, and our strategic mind and trying to figure it out. And there's something about learning to lean into a deeper listening, really. And at the risk of sounding a little out there, I would say learning to listen to my soul. And so for me, Kufunda Village, which is a learning village in Zimbabwe, really came out of me having the courage to listen to what my heart was telling me. So I grew up in Denmark. My father was Danish, my mother Zimbabwean. And when I was 12, we moved to Zimbabwe. And then I moved back to Denmark for university. And so I was between these two continents, two radically different worlds. And what I was experiencing in the European world was a lot of stories about Africa that did not align with my own experience of the richness of my rural Zimbabwean family, of the beauty, of the culture, of the solidarity. I just heard about poverty and backwardness and corruption and the list goes on. And I'm sure if you think challenge of Africa, you could find the list in your own mind. And so I had several years as I was finishing my university degree, this real strong feeling that something is out of kilter, and I can't really say exactly how it became clear to me, but there was this sense I need to go back and support people here because they believed the stories too. So I was hearing one thing in Europe and I was hearing the same thing in Zimbabwe. People saying, oh my God, we're poor, we're this, we're that, and you're so lucky, you're studying abroad, but what can we do? So almost a poverty mentality that had been, I don't know, interjected and accepted by many people on this land. And so but my experience of them was different. So it's like, but it doesn't help, to say, but you're not poor. And they're like, well, we're poor. So on my 30th birthday, I'd invited people from the north to come and celebrate with me in Zimbabwe. And we started on our farm. My parents had bought a farm here. And then we traveled through the country and we visited my grandparents' rural village. And it was that night in the rural village, 40 foreigners and 200, rural villagers from Zimbabwe playing the mbira, the drums, dancing. It was the most extraordinary night. And I remember witnessing it and saying, this is wealth. There's beauty here. And my friends from Europe were blown away. And the next morning, they gave such thanks for this experience that somehow had touched their soul, had touched their heart. And I remember leaving. We got in our buses and drove away from the village. And in that moment, I just knew. It was just click, I'm coming back. And I'm coming back to be in a journey with people from here to support them in reconnecting with their wealth and their wisdom and claiming it as wealth and wisdom. So my experience in my life is we can focus on all the things we don't have. We can focus on all the ways that we are poor, which is probably true for all of us. Or I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, or I'm, whether that's at an individual level or at community level, or we can focus on what we do have. What makes me proud to come from here? When was the moment where things were really working in this community? What do we know? And how can we build on that? And so Kufunda is really founded on principles of appreciative inquiry, of wealth and wisdom being here, and our job is to see them and find ways to expand them and allow them to grow. And so, I came back. No money, no funding. Zimbabwe was in the early days of its collapse. And so everyone was like, you crazy? But began. And so maybe that's my second piece is, if I'd waited for everything to be lined up, if I'd waited for funders to say, we'll fund Zimbabwe again, if I'd waited for me to figure out all the details, then maybe I'd still be waiting, So it was literally one step at a time, claiming I'm going to start a learning center, and then through each step finding out what was needed next. So at Kufunda we also work a lot with emergence, kind of the soup of chaos, like the chaotic path, and then finding our way through. And what we saw was this idea of not enough was so deeply ingrained in people. I thought we were just going to be doing work out in rural communities, but out of our first interactions with people, we realized, no, we actually need to build a center where people can come to us and be in process with us for a few days, for a few months, but really it's almost like a safe space of unlearning and relearning, and the relearning coming from our own root system, but being willing to bring in the new, being willing to bring in what comes from outside also. I could spend hours telling the story of Kufunda, but maybe I'll leave it at that and let you guide me further if you have questions or directions you want me to go.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. So you've mentioned that at some point you tried and you did listen to your soul, right? And you took the courage to do that, and therefore just to follow your dreams somehow, regardless all the barriers that could be there, right? And also at some point you mentioned appreciative inquiry. I don't know if this is one of the tools that you use to have the courage to listen to yourself and actually to help you to listen to yourself. But could you tell us more about this, about appreciative inquiry?
So just before I go there, you were saying which tools did I use to listen to myself. One of the things that I did, one of the last things I did in Denmark before coming back was I went on a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat. But any mindful practice, there's something about getting quiet. So, because we're so busy in our mind, we're so busy, but should I do this or should I do this? And so I remember that retreat was like, it was tonic for my journey because everything went quiet. I mean, not immediately, and it's not easy to meditate, but there was something about through cultivating a mindfulness practice, I was able to trust myself a little more deeply, because I could drop out of the everyday busy mind into something that felt more still and more connected to something deeper in me. So I'd say that would be the biggest. And still today, my practice now is conscious dance. So it's not that you must meditate, you must do this, but I think we must find a practice, an inner work practice that becomes our anchor in the midst of the madness. We are living through really incredibly challenging times. And so I find now that when I'm struggling with something or when there's a lot going on, I come back to my practice, which is conscious dance. Currently is something that I find a lot of clarity, and often whatever I'm working with finds its resolution in that practice. So I bring that in. Appreciative inquiry. Yeah, I think it's key, it's core, it's at the heart of Kufunda. I think it's at the heart of who I am and how I live my life. And I think that so much of Western education, and we get measured against others and who's better than, and marks, and so I think we live in a society where we're always looking over and to see, am I good enough? Am I as good as the other? Do I need to work harder? And I absolutely believe in hard work, but if I'm working hard from a place of fear or a place of not feeling good enough, then it's actually coming from a wound, and then what comes through can be strong, but my sense is it's not as healthy and it's not as whole as if I'm working out of deep passion and a sense of wholeness and a sense of capacity to contribute. So, I don't know that I've ever done an appreciative inquiry like on myself. I've done it in terms of communities that I'm with, but I think just in general, my outlook in life is that I'm pretty good at looking at the glass half full rather than half empty, and it's half full, and how do we fill it a little more? And what I found is, I think there's a quote that's often attributed to Goethe, which apparently he didn't speak, but it's that thing, whatever you can imagine, that begin it now, and then you will see life kind of coming in to support you in that beginning. And I really experienced that by just saying yes, even when the ground in front of me wasn't even clear. It was like it rose up to meet me, and it wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't stepped. And then the next step, and the next step. And I mean, the early days of Kufunda, we had months where, as we began to grow as an organization, and it was like, okay, where the salary is going to come from next month or in 3 months? Like, whoa, don't know. Let's just keep working. And there's something I almost feel about our passion, our belief, our inspiration, that caused others to look at us and say, look at these guys, what they're doing. Let's support them, So it was, there's something about just saying yes to life. Not that we don't then strategize and figure out how to do it in the best possible way, but there's something about that unequivocal yes, and then getting behind your yes, and then moving, that each and every one of us can move mountains. We are capable of so much more than we most of the times give ourselves credit for.
Thank you for sharing this very personal way of thinking. So usually, personally at least, while I'm sitting here, for instance, and I'm thinking of the best scenarios, it's very hard to make the first step, right? And so for you, what do you think, which kind of things you try to visualize in order to help you making this first step? And try to take away all these barriers?
So one piece of the story that I haven't shared is that the 3 years before Kufunda, I was involved in a network called Pioneers of Change. So I was one of the co-founders of Pioneers of Change. And Pioneers was a network for young people, so kind of like you guys, who were leaving the university world full of inspiration and ideals and going into the real world, so-called. And what we'd seen when we looked ahead at our, our peers who were a few years ahead of us, was often they'd come back and say, values and things we believed in, just don't expect too much. The real world, and there's not so much space as we thought to change companies or to make movement in governments or whatever it is. So they were kind of being like our big brothers and sisters, and they thought they were doing us a favor by saying, don't get your hopes up too high. It's hard out there. And so Pioneers of Change was us saying, no, we want to believe that we can continue. And so through Pioneers, so it was this learning community, a translocal learning community of young people just entering the world of work, saying, how do we keep our ideals and how do we find ways to action them in the world? And so as Pioneers of Change, we came up with 5 principles. So I'll speak those 5 because I feel like they speak to also what you're wondering out loud. And the first one was actually start now. Whatever it is, start now. However small, start now. And the second was do what matters. So I've met people who've said, one day I want to, create an orphanage for the young or this or this or this, but I'm first going to work, earn some money, and then I'll use that money to do that. And, you meet those people when they're 40, 50, and oftentimes they've forgotten that dream. It's lost it's died, actually. It might still be there as a paper figure, but its potency is gone. So start now. Do what matters, or do what matters, start now. Never stop asking questions. So a sense of, because also if we think we know, then we get a bit fascist about our things. So never stop asking questions, be curious, keep wondering. Engage with others, because we also realize that if people do that, if they go out and they start now and they do what matters and they never stop asking questions, they might actually get trampled by the system. You're like, who is this person? Away. And so there was a real sense that we can't do it alone. We have to engage with others. So wherever we are, so for me, I'm often looked at as the founder of Kufunda, but I began with others. I found my family. I found my friends. I said, do you want to join me? I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this, but I've got this kind of idea. And so many of the beginning phases of Kufunda, we'd meet in World Cafe and I'd say, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And have lots of conversations, and I get inspired and I'd see things I hadn't seen before. And if I tried to do it all alone, I think, number one, I wouldn't have had as much perspective, and number two, my courage probably would have failed me, and the energy to actually just step forward would have been gone. I feel like I'm missing a principle. Be yourself. That's where it started. Be yourself. Do what matters. Start now. Never stop asking questions and engage with others. And to become a pioneer of change, you had to fill out a little thing where you'd write what those principles meant to you. What does it mean to me to be myself? Oh, I've got to reflect on that. What does it mean to me to do what matters? What would it mean to me to start now? What would it mean to me to never stop asking questions? And who might I engage with to get going? So I still feel like those are so worthwhile as principles for life, but especially at that age where we're just coming out and finding our feet in the world and finding our way of making our contribution.
Thank you very much. I really invite the people that will be listening to us or are listening to us to press pause, come back a few seconds, take again those questions. What does it mean to me to, and try to answer this. And it can be a very nice exercise already to have some takeaways from this interview. So thank you very much, Maaiane, for sharing this.
Pleasure.
Uh,
Pleasure.
Two last questions. What is the main message that you want to convey and bring to the students or young professionals that are hearing us?
I think it's that, to believe in yourself and to not allow the world or other people to tell you that your dreams are too naive or too idealistic. The world is as it is because we have believed a certain thing. And my assumption is when we look back, when people look back 100, 200, 300 years from now, they'll look and they'll be like a little bit astonished that we were living in a carbon economy and that we were, that we're making the choices we were making. So there's something about, and COVID showed us, once we made a choice, we've got to actually stop everything. We could. So like how to find that thing inside you that says, no, this is not right. We have to find another way to not let that go to sleep, which is why it's so important to keep moving with it and to find your way. Even if it's millimeter by millimeter, for me that's the most important thing. I really believe that we each come with an inner compass that is our guidance, but we have to listen to it. Otherwise it falls asleep and then we're lost. And then we just keep going. Automan's in this big machine that's destroying the earth. It's up to each and every one of us to, take nothing less than our highest conscience as that which guides us in our actions and in our choices.
Practice that can
A
help us
practice.
regarding this.
So I've spoken about mindfulness and conscious dance. I do something called movement medicine. So if you're watching this, maybe Google movement medicine. It's wonderful. With COVID now, there's many online offerings because it can actually be fun to do your practice. So dance for me is wonderful. Time in nature, wonderful. Time with the horses. We've got horses. But if I were to give you one practice that's practical, one thing I do every evening is I take 5-10 minutes around 6 o'clock. I go into my bedroom and I close my eyes and I sit down and I go back through my day and I go in reverse. So I'm actually, as I start, I imagine myself, so I'm, in my mind's eye, I see myself even just having arrived. So I walk back out of my bedroom and back through my whole day. I go through my whole day and I'm looking from above. And there's something about moving. It's like so I'm not fast forwarding. I'm rewinding. I'm rewinding through my whole day up until the morning. So it is a mindfulness practice, but it's a practice that helps me see every day, my day, and it's a bit. I begin to see. Oh, when I do that kind of thing, oh, it makes me that makes me happy. Or, sure, I lost my temper there. Day 2, I lost my temper there again. Day 3, oh, and then oh, I'm not losing my temper anymore. So there's something about, in mindfulness we speak a lot about the witness, and so in meditation you can just be with your breath or whatever. But that practice of actually rewinding my whole day, every day, looking with compassion just at what I did and how it unfolded, is an incredible teacher. Incredible teacher. And it's a practice that's not really spoken about a lot. So I thought I'd bring that in because I think it might be worthwhile. And I used to be the kind of person that would put my phone down and never be able to find it. And I was just saying to my husband this morning that since we've been doing this rewinding practice, which has been only this year actually that we started, now when I can't find something, I can go back and then. So I'm also building an actual mental muscle. And so I still lose things, but oh, there it is, yes. I find them again. So, but actually, the most important thing is to find your own practices. So that would be, find the thing that brings you ground and calm and joy. And don't worry if it's not the same as your neighbor, because we're each unique and we're each different.
Right. I will stay with these closing words and share already this interview because I know someone that lost some keys yesterday. So Actually, I had Oikos International, the keys of the office, just for stating this. So,
It takes a while to build the muscle, but it really works. It's incredible.
well, better start today and prevent the future, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
thank you very much.
So could I just ask a question? Pleasure, really big pleasure.